in order for the construction industry to see the benefits of 3D printing, we're going to need to borrow from how the metal industry created 3D printers.
Like, can you give us some examples of things when you think about sustainability? What are things that you've played with in the past, and what have you learned through that?
Yeah, I mean, I referenced it at the beginning. We've tried with ways of constructing buildings. I mean, the average building in my industry, the average apartment building, we have at least 30 different specialty trades, they're called, but specialty skills that need to be on a job site to complete a construction project. That's like electricians, plumbers, people that finish work, framing, that creates a lot of inefficiency and a lot of waste that you're discarding of all this material and stuff is ending up in a landfill. And so as a result, like I have tried to find other solutions, and this company has tried to find other solutions that we can build things that are in a more factory-like setting, how you can replicate the efficiency of, an industrial process in a construction site. And so that's been different forms of modular, and a lot of them haven't worked. But like I said, the one that has been successful so far overseas, predominantly in Sweden, has been flat pack concrete modules that get assembled on site.
It's like a Lego, just shows up.
It's like a Lego, basically. Yeah, it's a handful of different parts, walls that have space for electrical conduit and for plumbing. And so when you connect these things, you're reducing the number of people that need to touch it at the final job site, because you already have space designed in the wall itself for the electrical, for the plumbing, the structure's there, the framing is there. Everything is in one single unit that can get assembled with one tradesperson instead of having to have, a half a dozen to touch that piece to do the same work. And so that trend will continue, but it's going to require like I said, a bunch of other innovations that have to happen before we're going to see like buildings getting erected by robots, for instance, which I think is totally possible. It's just that it's not going to happen next year or the following year, but it certainly could be a prospect of the future.
Well, let's elaborate on that. What do you think about 3D printed homes? What do you think you can, once, let's say that is enabled, how do you rethink everything? One of the things that impressed me about Tesla is Tesla rethought the car entirely. They didn't, entirely, all the things they're doing, he's like, we're just going to do all this differently. If you could kind of paint the picture in the future, like what would it look like?
3D printing, when it originally came out, was like this catch-all technology that people thought was going to like totally revolutionize anything, any kind of manufactured good. And it hasn't really worked out that way. Mm-hmm. And I think mainly because it's like a point-to-point system. So like you have like a plastic polymer that is basically trying to recreate something with a point. And if you have a large-scale industrial good, it's not very efficient. It's slow. It takes up a lot of machines, takes up a lot of space, therefore, in order to produce anything in high quantity. So it works for like rapid prototyping, but it hasn't worked for like mass manufacturing of goods. The one exception to that has been metal fabrication, where we have been able to do quite a lot of things that are kind of using 3D printing concepts and 3D printing technology to build actual products that are used today in industrial processes. And it's in order for the construction industry to see the benefits of 3D printing, we're going to need to borrow from how the metal industry created 3D printers, that it's able to do it based on essentially like lines instead of on a point system. And so there's been a number of technology companies out there that have tried to do this, and they've come up with some really cool stuff. I mean, you have some that have tried assembling basically a giant 3D printer on a job site that can lay concrete automated by itself. And you just basically put in a CAD drawing, and then it just traces that drawing until it finishes the entire structure.
Is that the robots? Have you seen the robots that will go out and they'll lay every little line, everything you need? They just go through it. Like you have to have like a flat concrete floor, and they'll go out and they'll just map it all.
Yeah. And then there's other ones that like are doing it in pieces, kind of like, we are where it gets assembled like Legos, where you have pieces that are assembled in a factory, then brought to site and then reassembled by people. The craziest one that I've seen is essentially using like your bone, like a lattice structure, which is this kind of like it and this random almost mesh of plastic material that has more tensile strength than steel I-beam does, but it weighs a fraction of the weight. And rather than current kind of construction where everything is very square, the post and beam, you have weight that gets transferred horizontally to your posts that then transfer the weight vertically down. You can build things that are any kind of a shape that you can imagine. And so it kind of like blows your mind. Like if this took mass scale and they could get away from the current drawback, which is the slow point-to-point aspect of 3D printing, and they can figure out how to do it faster, it would mean that, like, from an architect standpoint, you're like, sky.
The world is yours.
Like, what does it look like, right? Like, you can imagine like Tony Stark's house that would be like the craziest looking structure out of space that doesn't need to have a single right angle if you didn't want to.
Question on that point. So I felt like in the US over time, we've gotten way more conservative. All the houses, especially in the cities, they're just boxes. Versus you go to other places, let's say you go to China. It's amazing. The last time I was in like Shanghai, it was incredible. The designs they had. I'm like, the creative freedom. I'm like, these buildings look amazing. Why is that? Is that a code problem? I don't think it's a lack of creativity in the US, but it just feels like we're getting more sterile here from an architecture standpoint.